Hello, viewers and listeners. Thanks for joining the show. Matt Marshall here, signing in. Ed and I had a great time during the National Preparedness Month, and there was a bunch to cover. And on this particular episode, we went over our typical 1 hour of content. So we're going to split the show into two parts. First, we'll talk shelter in place and evacuation planning. Second, we'll cover communications. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite app. And don't forget to rate the show with as many stars as you feel we deserve. We hope you enjoy at GenXTalkin. Now, on to part one, shelter in place and evacuation planning. Well, hey there, all you GenXers. Great to be back again for another exciting show on making plans for preparedness. I'm Matt Marshall, overall preparedness enthusiast, and I'm here to remind us all with preparedness comes comfort, with preparedness comes peace, something we could all use a bit more of.
And I'm Ed Wasson, aka Wilksy, and I'm here to remind us that with proper prior planning, you will prevent piss poor performance.
Perfect, Ed. Perfect. Well, Ed, before I really launch into anything today, I wanted to start with a special thanks to our listeners and our viewers. Hey, we've almost hit 700 downloads of our podcast in just about 45 days. That's a pretty incredible feat, and we are super excited. We wouldn't be here without you all, our loyal audience. So we thank you, and we thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much, everybody.
So as a quick reminder for those who haven't already done so, hey, consider subscribing at podcast.genxtalkin.com. Now, with that said, you could also, of course, look it up in any of your podcast apps that are out there. So please take a moment, subscribe, and you'll get any of the latest episodes coming up. Ed, anything else you want to add for the listeners?
Just reiterating that thanks. We greatly appreciate all the support out there.
So with all that said, on to the show. It's National Preparedness Month and almost the end of it, in fact. Mm-hmm. That mainly means two things as National Preparedness Month. It means making a plan, and it means creating a bug out bag or a go bag. We've spent some time in the past couple of episodes talking about different types of bags. We've talked about everyday carry bags, go bags, bug out bags, get home safe bags, all sorts of really cool bags that are out there. That's not the end of it. We'll talk about more of that stuff, of course, in future episodes. But today, I think, Ed, we are going to talk on the other half, making a plan.
Making a plan.
One of the important concepts around making a plan is, first, we all really should realize that it's not just one plan, right? It's actually many plans. There could be fire escape plans, shelter in place plans, evacuation route planning, water collection planning, communications plans, financial planning. There's tons of plans that you can actually make. We're really only going to talk about a couple of different concepts around planning, things like sheltering in place, things like getting out quick. And we'll touch a little bit on like fire escape planning and things like that as well.
So I was going to say some of those are pretty simple, like a fire escape plan. Mm-hmm. But I think the main thing to consider is that people don't plan to fail. They fail to plan. I mean, you don't go to Disney World and you just don't have any kind of plan. You're at least thinking about what you want to do out there. And I think with planning comes at least a little bit of thought. And that's, for the most part, what Matt's going to talk to us about today with planning is at least putting a little bit of thought into it. That way you're already thinking about planning, and then the planning can come into effect.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, Ed, you just mentioned something that's very, very interesting. You said, if you're going to Disneyland, you create a plan, right?
Mm-hmm. And I find most people do anyway.
Well, exactly. But I'm sitting here thinking to myself, yeah, I mean, I go to a theme park, I create a plan. I look at a map and I go, okay, I want to go look at this one. I'll go that one. I'm going to go that one. I'm going to go that one. This is my plan to get through the park. Or if I'm going to work on a particular, at a particular location on a day, I plan, okay, we're going to work on this project, then this project, then this project, and we're going to conclude with, then we're going to go to lunch, and then we're going to finish up with this in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. Everything we do in life is better performed if we have some type of plan. So when it comes to preparedness, why wouldn't we create some form of plan?
Yeah, and I think a key thing is a lot of people talk about planning, and you're in the corporate world or whatever, and you have people that go to meetings all day and you don't even know what they ever talked about. Nobody knows whatever got accomplished in those meetings.
Yeah.
And when you're at that high level of an executive decision, who knows what the outcome is going to be. But in your own world as an individual and trying to basically govern your life and help facilitate the peace, comfort, and security of those in your family and household that love you and everything else like that, a little bit of thought and a little bit of planning for very basic things is actually quite easy to accomplish. And Matt's going to help guide us through some of that.
The biggest part of our community is new preppers. You know, I'm not going to teach Mike Glover what to do as far as prepping goes, you know, field craft survival. I'm not going to teach Tim Kennedy what to do about survival. These guys are the epitome of survival and preparedness. So I'm never going to teach them something unless it's like just something specifically from my mind. But new preparedness minded folks, this is where I think we can really help people, because we have some excellent points of view. But one of the things that I would like to start with is just sharing some very simple resources, actually from the government, that can help people to understand. Now, I'm not saying that we should rely upon the government to solve our problems. What I'm saying is don't reinvent the wheel, right?
There's a lot of useful information that's already out
there. Absolutely. Tons of it. So I would recommend to many users, start with a couple of different things, right? First off, ready.gov, probably one of the most popular prepping sites that preppers don't like to go to, right? Because it's government, and like lots of preppers, lots of, you know, homesteader type people don't want to rely on the government. So I'm going to be a libertarian, or I'm going to be an independent. I'm not going to rely on that. But ready.gov really does have a lot of information. It helps a lot of people understand what it's like to make a plan. It is one of the most simplistic ways to review, to research, and then to start developing your own plan. I actually posted another blog post on scheduling your preparedness, and it takes a snapshot that website provides for us, and it breaks it up into 12 sections. You could actually take each one of those sections and do each one of those sections each month, and in a year, you're so much more prepared than you normally would. Okay. Now, granted, you could do it so much faster than that if you really put a focus on it.
Yeah, and it's easy peasy.
Yeah, and it can be one. You know, on the reverse side of that, I saw this other post. It was 30 days of preparedness, and it was like, it was like, one day you're going to build an entire water supply. Okay, so not only are you gonna collect 1 gallon per person for X number of days, right? Maybe it's 7 days, or maybe it's 30 days, whatever that time frame. One day you're going to solve your entire water problem. The next day, you're going to solve your entire food problem. The next day, you're going to solve your entire shelter problem. The next day, you're going to solve your entire security problem, right? 30 days, you can get a lot done, but you'll also spend about $50,000 if you really do it right.
Yeah.
Not realistic.
And that's not offering much of a contingency either, because that sounds pretty stringent.
Yeah, super stringent. Whereas if you take something over time, for instance, if you went to a site similar to the ready.gov, which it's actually provided by FEMA, you just took the most basic concepts that they provide for you. One of the biggest one is kind of step number 2, and that's communications plan, creating a very detailed communications plan for you and your family, and maybe your other relations, friends around your area that you may want to help in times of disaster or times of need, right?
Commo plan and commo checks.
Later on in the show, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about communications planning. And then there's the family emergency plan. That's a big part of that ready.gov site. It really delves into families with kids, younger kids, as well as teens. But then it also has some information about maybe elderly, pets. It has just a plethora of information. So it helps us to create a family emergency plan that would be super helpful for just about anyone. So I just wanted to start and let the viewers and listeners know that there are very, very simple places you can go to gain information. And then you can really start getting deep into it. And there's a plethora of sites and videos and podcasts that we can use for making plans as well. So this is a great place to start, right?
Yeah. Matt, I was talking about planning, and when I think of planning, I think of the very basic military operation planning. And we had acronyms like BAMSIS, which was begin planning, arrange reconnaissance or information gathering, make your plan and your reconnaissance, and complete the plan, issue any orders, and then supervise. And then you had another one, SMEAC or OSMEAC, which was your situation, mission, execution, administration, and commands, things like this. And I think if you start with like begin planning, just begin thinking about it and do a little bit of research, then you'll find the next steps are actually fun to research.
I think this is one of the reasons I got so passionate about preparedness, is because it becomes, not just stressing out about, oh my God, what am I going to do in a hurricane? Or what am I going to do if there's a nuclear bomb or an EMP? And read fiction books and try to tear them apart. That's what I do. I'll sit there and I'll listen to an Audible, or I'll read a particular book, whatever it may be. And I'll sit there and think to myself, would I respond in that type of situation similarly? Or what, how would I do that? There's a great series of books called Getting Home, which is, it's interesting because the premise is a guy that has a remote job. He travels around for his work in the southeast United States, right? And he was driving, and he just as a regular kind of everyday thing, he would throw his bug out bag in the back of his car, and he just have it back there, and he drove around to wherever he was. He didn't necessarily plan everything out, but he generally talked about preparedness with his family back home. So he lived in Florida, and he was in like Louisiana or something like that, or Mississippi. And EMP or some big event happens. He gets stuck. His car breaks down. All others' cars break down. And he thinks to himself, I know what this is. Car's useless. Phone's useless. Computer's useless. Find everything I can that's of value in my vehicle. Put it in the backpack. Start walking. Because I'm walking back. I got to get home as quickly as I can. And so that's one of those get home safe bags, right? The concept of this book is fantastic. And it really hit home to me, because it was like, this is how I would respond. He was no Superman. He was no, military specialist or anything like that. He was just a normal guy. He did carry a weapon because he was in mostly free states. So he did carry deadly weapons as well as protective, knives and other types of non-lethal weapons,
which can be used as tools as well. But what's the name of this?
Exactly.
What's the title of this book, Matt?
Going Home is the first book, and there's a series of like 4 or 5, like surviving home and defending home and things like that. So, but Going Home, I believe is the first one. But it's a whole series. I think it's about 4 books. So anyways, excellent series. There's other similar type of books, but that's what I'll do. I'll sit there and I'll think to myself, okay, what would I do in that situation? And that's part of the fun of this. To me, that's part of the fun of making a plan is, okay, let's see. If I were caught in that type of situation, would I actually be prepared? Do I have a bug out bag?
Yeah, even if it's something, trivial or novel, something like that, like reading a book or a magazine article, or even watching something on the television, or listening to an Audible book or whatever, it gets your mental juices flowing,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
part of preparing, is thinking about these things.
Yeah. It can be a little intimidating, a little scary. And that's the biggest reason I'm suggesting someone start from the perspective of a ready.gov. It's extremely simplified, so that a kid could really look at it if they, if you wanted to go into this with the thoughts of training your kids up on preparedness as well. So it's an excellent place to start. All right. So let's look at some basic plans. First off, let's talk about shelter in place.
Shelter in place.
So
my favorite.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I think many preppers, especially if there's like homesteader type of preppers where they're doing, planting gardens or cutting down trees, whatever it might be. They're doing all of that so that they're prepared at home, so that they don't have to bug out when the government tells them to.
Yep. Shelter in place and cross this line you do not.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. So I think most preparedness mind people walk that same path. That first, in order to shelter in place, in order to do anything really preparedness related, but especially thinking about shelter, is thinking about your greatest threats. In some of our episodes that we've reviewed already on GenXTalkin, we've touched briefly on threat event types. And I want to separate this out into 4 different categories. Okay. So first off, high impact, high frequency means
high frequency,
exactly what it says, right? High impact, meaning it can cause a pretty significant impact on your life, on your daily life, whatever it may be. High frequency, something as simple as a traffic jam. Now, I don't know.
A lot.
I don't know about you, but the first time I moved out here, I got caught in a very, very long traffic jam, getting from one side of a beltway to the other side of a beltway just to get through and around a city. I spent 3.5 hours going one way on the outer loop on this beltway. 3.5 hours. That was effectively about 7 miles.
Wow.
So 3.5 hours.
Sounds like that area.
Do you think that I really had to go to the bathroom at the end of that?
Preparedness. Maybe that's where those Audible books come in handy too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's say I had been fasting the day before, as my wife loves to do. She does this intermittent fasting, and she will go from effectively 9 o'clock in the evening to 4 or 5 o'clock then the following day and not eat anything. So imagine if she was stuck on that beltway and right at 4 o'clock and starts, and it goes for another 3 hours or 4 hours of sitting there in traffic. You can't get on and off because you're sitting there in traffic. You can't just exit, right? You're stuck.
Yep.
And we've all seen the pictures of that. So traffic jams, perfect example of high impact. It impacts you in a fairly significant way just that day. And it happens pretty frequently in different areas around our country, right?
Yep. That's why truckers carry lots of empty Gatorade bottles in their truck, by the way. Actually, some of them have actually a portable little porta potty.
Yeah, right.
If they get jammed in traffic jams, truckers do that. They have a bathroom in their rig, basically.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, we don't all have those. You sound like you're speaking from experience there, Ed.
Yep. In my rig, I had a little porta potty, but I never got stuck in traffic that bad. I mean, I got stuck in traffic a couple of times, but it wasn't so bad. I had to basically put it in park or pull off the side if I could and use the bathroom. But I had it in case I needed it, which I guess goes to preparedness. And it really wasn't my thought at the time. I was driving somebody else's rig and, for about a year and they had it. So
yeah, gotcha.
I'm glad they had it. It was there in case I needed it. Unfortunately, I never needed it.
That's good. That's good. Some other situations might be like if you live in or you travel through in order to get to or from work or home through a dangerous area. If you live in a dangerous area, that could be potentially high impact and high frequency drive-by shootings or muggings in the neighborhood or robberies in the neighborhood. There are some apps that I track on a regular basis. Any type of criminal type of activities that's going on in your area, and it'll show you a list each week of events that have occurred and where exactly. And they don't say like this address. What they do is they say the 900 block of Shore Acres Road or something to that effect, right? But I track those things because I want to understand what is going on in my community, and if there's something you can kind of monitor over time and see what's really happening, or get a sense that there's been an awful lot of thefts going on in that part of the neighborhood or whatever it may be.
But a lot of that comes with training and experience as well, Matt. You're going to run into different areas, different times. And once you get a little bit more experience, you'll see something like I noticed something the other day when we were in the south part of Texas. I was driving around with Scout and my wife, and we were in an area you could tell it was a little bit rough and probably a little bit of drugs in the air and stuff like that. But we had to get through the area. And Nisha didn't notice it, but there was a guy walking along the street there, and he made sure he made really good eye contact with me as I was driving, and he just started walking a certain way, and he went like this, looking right at me. He went like this to his wrist, like he's, telling me about what time it was, whatever. He didn't have a watch though. So he was, he wasn't warning me off a certain area or anything else like that. He probably thought we were cruising for drugs, and that was his signal that he was holding.
Okay. Gotcha.
Different areas, different times. Those people on the street will have different signals. It's summertime somewhere, somebody will take off their shirt and go to the street corner, take off their shirt, swing it around. That means I'm holding right now. You can come up to me and buy from me. Things like that. So there's a whole bunch of different little subtle things that you can see that you'll know, hey, I'm in a bad area, and it's going to be high crime, and it's going to be high risk. Yeah. So
high impact, high frequency. The potential in that neighborhood, in that area, if you have to travel through that area on a regular basis, got to be prepared, got to have a plan. Fires in certain areas, like California has been experiencing a lot of fires more recently. Colorado is a pretty hot spot for fires, up in the Oregon area as well. So generally in the West, where there's a lot of forest, in particular dry forest areas. And then there's other things like epidemics. I'm not talking pandemics like we've been experiencing in the last year and a half, but epidemics of outbreaks and sicknesses that have gone on in different parts of the world. Those are fairly common. We don't think about them all that much because we're so overwhelmed with impact of what COVID has done to us, but epidemics have happened a lot throughout history, right?
Yeah, we had that hantavirus epidemic through the Four Corners area.
That's right, in the Four Corners. Yep. I remember that. Little rodents. House fires, another absolutely common thing that happens just about every day in the United States. So another one of those things that are very high impact, high frequency.
Got to have a plan for that.
Next up is high impact, low frequency, right? Something that can happen, a massive event that happens not so often. And so the planning for it is maybe lower on the priority list. So there we're talking about very, very large weather events like the big hurricanes, the superstorms.
Yeah, that hit New York really hard.
Was it Sandra? Superstorm Sandra? Gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. Anyways, of course, the big hurricanes that have been coming through even more recently. Those are big events. Of course, then you start talking about the other more obscure, like electromagnetic pulse or EMP, coronal mass ejection, which is it's very, very similar type of effect as you would get from an EMP. Hacking and cyber attacks, like that big hack that happened to the colonial pipelines recently, which caused gas prices to go up so dramatically. These are all, I wouldn't say so rare, but they are very, very rare. But boy,
They're very impactful though.
When they happen, they are
And
very
a lot of
impactful.
those, man, a lot of those are hard to plan or prepare for. You just have to kind of be in, a little bit in readiness in general.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about that, Ed, is if you prepare in general, you could be prepared for just about anything, right? Yep. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have, now I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it doesn't mean you have to have a year's supply of food and water and safety and, guns and ammunition and protecting your house and having all these big walls to shoot up and all this stuff. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the vast majority of things that might occur in your area are things you can prepare for, and that would certainly help you in these larger type of events, like hurricanes or some of the more dramatic, fictional book type of events like EMP and hacking and things like that.
Yeah. Speaking of that hurricane that hit Dallas. Well, actually it hit Houston a few years ago. I think it's Hurricane Harvey. Was it 4 years ago? Well, I think that wiped out gas for the whole region for quite a while. There's like 3 or 4 days I couldn't get gas at all. And when I did get gas, it was through one of those mobile apps. So it's really actually one of those people that came out to me to actually fill up, and they had limited availability, and the gas price spiked to like, even in Texas is like $3.50 a gallon.
Wow. And so, that's actually, if you compare that to prices today, that's actually a normal price today, at least where I live.
So there was almost 2 straight weeks that there was quite a few people not going to work. So the upside of that was that the roads were pretty clear.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at the opposite side, and that's low impact, high frequency. So highly frequent events that can occur. Low impact. They don't really cause that much. So again,
but they happen all the time.
Yeah, happen all the time. Again, I would talk about traffic jams, because although they could impact you in a pretty high way, typically a traffic jam, your normal everyday traffic jam in most areas, it's pretty low impact. You'll sit in the car for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're fine.
It's a little bit of a disruption more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course things like, although I personally would find this a big impact, if your vehicle's out of gas, right? And we've talked about this before, ways to avoid that, like never let your vehicle get below a half tank. Use the half a tank as your trigger to fill up. And then other things like pickpockets, muggings, they're things that they happen pretty regularly, especially if you're in a pretty popular area like New York City or Mardi Gras or something like that. It happens just about every single night and many times a night,
Yeah. And it's higher frequency, but if it's just somebody picking your pocket, it's low it's low impact on you. Just write it off as a loss.
Yeah.
There's as much planning and prepping however alert and defensive as you want to be. If you're in one of those crowded situations, whether you're in Southeast Asia or at Mardi Gras in New Orleans, you're going to be targeted for that at the very least. So just be ready to get back to the hotel room or whatever and find that, whatever cash you were carrying is not in your pocket anymore.
Yeah, right. Now there's of course much more follow up if it were your entire wallet and your your ID and your credit cards and all the other stuff was in there. Like immediately you start calling credit card companies and things saying cancel. Yeah. But that's a totally different show maybe.
Different scenarios and different places and times, you're going to be carrying different things. If you're in one of those kind of events or areas, you're probably just going to be packing light, or carrying light, and just maybe just one card and your ID card and a little bit of cash or something. You're not going to have your whole wallet with you maybe. So
that's a very good point, because that is part of planning. If you plan correctly, you won't have your whole wallet with you. You only have, maybe a couple of 20s and a ID or something like that, just something very small. So just
enough money to bribe the cops to let you go.
because they're probably drinking too. Who knows?
Yeah, you got to have a couple of packs of cigarettes, depending on what Eastern European country you're going through or something. Hey, I got a carton of cigarettes here for you guys. Just stop hassling me. Let me go.
Just let me go. Just let me go. One more quick thing on low impact, high frequency. Relatively low impact if you run out of food at home, because you can, in these times, you can just usually you can just go out and get some more food, or you can just starve for a day. You can live 3 weeks without food, by the way.
Matt, on that point right there, I want to bring up that due to logistical supply chain issues in the US, especially that we've seen in the last year and a half, I would plan and prep to make sure you always have some food in your house at the very least, not just be on this day-to-day thing, because here in the Dallas suburb areas, you go into your Kroger's or your Tom Thumb or your Walmarts or your Targets, and you can still see at any time of the day, they're still having shortages of a lot of basic stuff like cereal.
Gosh, that is so true. Gatorade in our area. I'm a pretty big Gatorade fan. I like to have it after I've done a workout, and it's been very, very difficult for me to get Gatorade. All empty shelves, and it's so surprising. You don't expect to see it, but there is definitely a supply chain issue going on.
Yeah, there's something going on, and I think, to be honest with you, I think you're going to see it more and more, because I think there's been, if it hasn't been some sort of COVID or other natural disaster type issue that caused a hiccup or something in the basic logistics supply chain type thing, something has had an impact. And I've heard some of the employees at the Walmarts and stuff like that talk, and they don't know what it is, but they're saying, we don't know what the deal is, but we're consistently seeing a shortage of stuff. Ask the management, well, aren't you trying to get these orders fulfilled? And they say, yes, we are, and it's just not coming in. So I don't know where the hiccup is, but in a future episode, I'm going to talk about like survival rations. So we've got actual packages of survival rations.
That's always a good fallback. The things like the MREs are a good use. Those Mountain House or For Patriot little prepackaged freeze-dried foods or things like that. Those are super helpful just to have around. There's a less expensive way to do it, which is to buy those number 10 cans full of a meal, like a lasagna meal or something like that. But I have kind of shied away from the big number 10 cans, because once you open it, I think you only have about 2 weeks to eat the whole thing. And that's just not typically the way I think through things,
my big thing is having lots of oatmeal, because I can eat oatmeal 4 times a day. If I have a little bit of sugar or cinnamon or butter or whatever, and if you don't have those things too, if push comes to shove, the survival rations, MREs, and oatmeal and things like that are easy to store, keep for a long time, or rice and ramen, things like this that we survived on when we were in college. Have about 2 weeks worth of that in your cupboard somewhere, and I think you'll be fine.
Hey, it's a perfect place to start, and it's super, super cheap to do that. Right.
Yeah. Super cheap, super fast, super easy. Get that stuff and never have to worry about, always stock up on toilet paper too. Apparently. You'll never have to worry about whatever the supply logistics chain issue is.
Yeah. I was hopefully stop talking about toilet paper.
Don't get me started. We were out of toilet paper for months. I mean, we weren't out of toilet paper in our house, but we were trying to see if we could go in and get some more in case we ran out. And there was no place around for at least, I think it's almost 6 months. Nobody had any toilet paper.
Yeah. I find it so interesting how we can sit there, rush back to as we're standing in line for 45 minutes to get into a Sam's Club or a Walmart or something, to get that first, access to the toilet paper that came in overnight or something because you heard somehow that it came in on Tuesday night and you're there on a Wednesday morning.
You couldn't
And
even order this stuff through Amazon.
You couldn't order it anywhere. But the fun thing I find great, it's just hilarious, is how you can walk right past Kleenex tissues.
Yeah.
In order to race to get to the toilet paper. And people are just, there's a huge pile of Kleenex tissues right there. And I'm going, well, I can wipe my butt with that, can't I?
Or the, like, even these little wipes.
Yeah, the little wipes. Yeah, absolutely.
We always had a bunch of these too, and sometimes they were out of stock.
Yeah, definitely. Those went out of stock in our local area too. All right, let's finish up. Low impact, low frequency. All right.
Low impact, low frequency.
Now there can be a number of different things here. I kind of limit it, but heat waves. Now down where you are, heat waves happen a lot more often than they do where I am. Mm-hmm. And in a good part of the country, though, heat waves are fairly rare, low frequency. And for the most part, most housing these days has some form of air conditioning. Housing and businesses have some form of air conditioning. So it's not super impactful. Of course, if you're not up to date on bills and things like that, it might be a lot more impactful, but that's part of planning. And then, things like gas prices rising, a minimal storm surge, those type of things. These are all things that can affect us. Shifting gears just slightly, let's try to figure out how can a new prepper understand what threats occur in their area. And let's focus initially on just natural issues, right? Like hurricanes, tornadoes, winter storms, heat wave, those type of things. So what do you think? Where do you think they could go?
Well, like you said, like that FEMA site, and for me, even if you're traveling in your area or wherever you travel, you want to plan on one of the main things that I've seen occur multiple times is that somebody from a little bit further north travels down to the high desert somewhere around, like say Carlsbad Caverns in Mexico. They go out on a hike, and it's hot, but it's a dry heat. Your sweat is evaporating, you're cooling down. A lot of people don't think to hydrate, and they can get off a trail and they can get lost, and you end up coming up with people that pass away on trails all the time because they get lost. So first of all, knowing where you are you going to be staying here where you're at, and what are the threats and risks where you're at? Are you traveling somewhere? What are the threats and risks where you're traveling from? And then just do some basic research with either those planning and preparation sites that you mentioned, or very basic, fast, easy Google searches through FEMA or others are always going to be a good win.
So there is actually a website that puts all this together in a super awesome interactive map. Okay, it's called the National Risk Index. If you just do a quick Google search up for National Risk Index, it kind of leads you through this, but you go to the particular website, you look for Explore the Map. It'll show you this interactive map with all counties in every state in the United States, right? Of course, it's a national risk index, so it doesn't help you if you're going to Canada or Europe or Asia or whatever. Let's say you're Chicago bound, right? And you want to see what type of activities are going on in Chicago. You can click on Cook County, which is where Chicago is located, and it'll zoom in on that particular map. And then on the side, what it'll do is it'll provide a much more detail on that specific area. So it'll say, for instance, risk index. It'll break down risks related to hazards, natural hazards.
Yep.
And it'll compare those risks, put you on a scale effectively compared to other neighboring counties and national average. So it'll rate, and it'll just use very, very general terms like more hazardous or significantly more hazardous or low hazard or something to that effect. So it's pretty general in its categories, but you can look, if you just look at the map, you can see Southern California, terrible. because of heat waves, because of not tornadoes, fires, because of earthquakes, because of economic issues that are going on down there. Cook County, Chicago, New York, Florida, because of hurricanes, Houston, because of hurricanes,
Yeah.
and heat and all sorts of other things going right. So you can see those big red areas, and then you can drill into those areas. If you just want to perform an exercise, you can see that. So it's not just the risk index stuff, right? It's also things like expected annual loss. So that would be like, based on the property values that are in that area, what is the potential for actual monetary loss if there were a hurricane or a heat wave or whatever it may be? You know, what are the actual potential loss risks? And then there's social vulnerability, which is interesting, and that's how susceptible a community is to those impacts. Again, we're talking about just natural hazards right now. We're not necessarily talking about economic collapse or EMP or anything like that. And then finally, there's some discussions about community resilience, meaning what is the ability for a community to prepare for these events and then adapt to those conditions, maybe recover a little more rapidly from the issues. So those are some things that they provide on a regular basis. So I would definitely, as you're preparing to make your plan to shelter in place, consider going to this National Risk Index, look up your own county and your surrounding areas. Maybe if you work in a different county, you can look up that county as well, and try to define what threats are common in your area and how you can prepare for those.
This is really neat. This map is really neat map.
I got to tell you, my eye goes directly to the red spots. Like I said,
that's what I
Chicago,
did.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Houston, you can see these red spots and you can drill in and out of the areas depending on where you're at or where you're going to. And I can see Houston or I can see Dallas, and then I can see what our basically what our risk index is.
Now, one of the things I find is most interesting is over there on I think it's the right-hand side on that little navigation area, you can drag down, you can see every single natural hazard and what risk index that natural hazard has in that specific area. But then at the bottom, you can also create a report. And that report takes all of that information for that county, extracts it and puts it into a nice little PDF format that you can export and you can hold on to, use as part of your preparedness planning, right?
Yep. So we're into Texas and Dallas and Dallas area and Houston area. So that's Houston is Harris County, and in Dallas there's Dallas County. So Houston is the highest risk county in Texas. You can see it's primarily because of hurricanes. And in Dallas, we have a high risk as well, but we're not the highest risk county in the state. But we have high risk because of tornadoes, hailstorms, and lightning. So those are, you see right there on the map, what kind of risk you have in what area. Are you in that area? Are you going to travel to that area? Now you know what most of the risk is.
Instantaneously you have that information readily available for you, so you can again, like Ed was saying, if you're traveling to a location, it's very, very helpful to do quick research. And it's not always just the obvious things like the hurricanes and the tornadoes. You know, there's other things in there, like you say, lightning storms, which, you know, over in Panama City, you expect that over in Florida because that's like the lightning capital of the world. But you know, in Texas, in Central Texas, maybe you're going, well, I didn't really expect it to be, but doggone it if it's there, you know?
Yeah. Excellent.
So that's good stuff.
Matt.
Yeah. So I think that's a place for people to start. And again, I say that's primarily for people who are sheltering in place. And then, you know, if you're traveling to a location, knowing where you might shelter wherever you're traveling.
Yeah, and that brings up another point that I threw out a really quick, I think Instagram and TikTok on, was that when we were in Crystal Beach near Galveston, Houston area, we actually ran into quite a few people that we were hanging out with, and they have beach houses out there for vacation and vacation rentals.
Yep.
And they said they were there when one of the hurricanes hit, and it came in and it went out, and then it came in and it went out, and it came in and went out. Well, the first time they were able to evacuate and they got up the road a little ways, that when they thought the hurricane had left, they went back to their house and the hurricane came back in and they were unable to evacuate. So they sheltered in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if certain thing happens, you're at a certain risk and vulnerability for getting stuck there. You have certain risk and vulnerability for property damage or whatever. But if you're able to evacuate, your house is going to have a higher risk and vulnerability for being burglarized.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If you're unable to evacuate and you have to shelter in place, here comes the next step. And maybe Matt and I will talk about this in an upcoming podcast, but now you have to worry about are at a higher risk and vulnerability for a home invasion.
Yes.
So that's a different scenario. Burglary, you're not there. You don't have to worry about it. They're just going to steal your stereo and your TV or whatever. Home invasion, you're in there and they're going to be defensive or whatever. But apparently during natural disasters, they said they found out that there's whole gangs of people that will risk it and try to go into these houses while nobody's there. They're thinking everybody's evacuated, and the area is going to get burglarized. If they're stuck there and they end up sheltering in place, there's a couple of families that told us, we were there and here comes a guy coming into our house intent on robbing us.
Jeez,
and
man.
Fortunately, in that area, that's the wrong area to do this in because Texas is one of those free states.
Yeah.
And they had an AR in hand. So the guy with that owned the house has his AR right there. He's like, "Can I help you?" And the guy turned around and said, "Nope, sorry, wrong house.
I'm going to go next door and steal from what's there.
I'm going to go to this house that has a Biden flag on it."
Yeah, exactly.
We don't mean to be political in this podcast, but I'm just saying.
We do not. Yes.
No.
Yes. So no, very, very good point. I do find it interesting, the difference. Thank you for clarifying the difference between burglary versus home invasion, because personally, burglary, I could care less about,
right.
But home invasion, oh boy,
that's
some scary stuff
because they're going to be armed with at least a crowbar, whatever they pried your door open with.
Yeah. So if you're not armed, if you're armed with nothing, you're a victim.
And you already know that they're a high risk person. They're willing to take a lot of a risk. So
right.
And they're already probably on edge. They're probably druggies or whatever. So you're in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's kind of shift gears here. Let's talk about planning to evacuate or get out quick. We have thrown out this time frame in the past. So the government recommends having a bug out bag as part of your National Preparedness Month, right? Or a go bag in the event that you have to get away from home quickly. And most preparedness mind people, including government agencies, say that within 15 minutes, you should be prepared to get out. And you should be prepared with at least 72 hours worth of life-saving stuff, whether it's heat, light, food, water, security, shelter, things that you can put on your back, leave in less than 15 minutes, and live for 72 hours, all right there in your backpack. Now, of course, 72 hours, I personally think that's too short. I think it should be close to a week, 2 weeks. Be prepared for an extended period of time. So much easier to prepare for 3 days, right? You can throw a couple of energy bars in there and you're good for 2 days, you know, so it's no big deal. Preparing to evacuate rather than shelter in place can be actually scary. Number one, you don't know where you're going, or do you? Because if you're properly prepared, you know exactly where you're going.
Yep.
Right. The people who are not prepared don't know where they're going. So they end up going, I guess I'm going to the Superdome because the Superdome's the closest shelter, right? And they wind up suffering through situations that are so much worse than if they'd have just stayed home. Now that's not Katrina. I'm talking about Katrina, and there's no way they could have stayed home in those situations. But
No, that was an impossible situation. But that
it
brings up
was.
another good point, is that, as you brought up, there's this FEMA site. It's a great site for,
Hmm.
your individual family household preparedness for certain situations. But you take Katrina or other events like COVID or like the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and you can see the U.S. government doesn't have a big scale plan on providing you with a reasonable amount of preparedness. So use the government resources to prepare yourself, but
Yes.
don't rely on them,
No,
because
no, no.
the Superdome or wherever is not the place you're going to want to be, because it's probably going to be one of the most disorganized and grabastic, catastrophic places to try to shelter. You want to prepare to survive and survive on your own. Not,
Yeah.
I wouldn't count on the government to have the best preparedness for you.
Yeah, I remember it was, I'm pretty sure it was Darren Wisdom when we were interviewing Darren for the September 11th stuff that said, you should be properly prepared, but don't necessarily depend on the government, because with all the experience he's had in all of his 20 some odd years of military career and all the experience you've had of how the government organizes things. And if you think about how the DMV is typically organized,
Yep.
they're not well organized. And it's because there are literally millions of people they're trying to service. It's
It's a
very,
huge thing. It's,
very,
yeah.
very difficult to organize for such a massive thing. Now that's not to say that these people in FEMA and emergency operations aren't well thought out and well prepared themselves. They are.
Yeah.
They're absolutely ready. I work with these people all the time through my
Yeah.
CERT organization, and they are awesome people, great people,
Yeah.
and they mean so well. They
Yeah. It's
aren't
not
they
to
aren't
say,
they're not
yes.
the evil FEMA that you read about in these fictional books, you know?
Yes. It's not to say that they're not highly trained, educated, experienced, or
Right.
professional.
Right.
There's a lot of great people but it's a huge organizations,
Yeah.
and especially at the US government federal level, you're just talking about very cumbersome uh, overall
Yeah.
scenarios.
Yeah.
And um, there's just a lot of inefficiencies and bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Ed's actually absolutely right. Use the materials that they have to help you get prepared, but don't rely on them to provide that support mechanism when you're needing to evacuate. Have a place to go, a place to bug out to, have a bug out bag to go to, have a means to get there, and you'll solve a massive amount of the problems that you may run into.
Yep.
Right. And of
Things
course,
to think about in planning and prepping for
yeah,
evacuations.
yeah. And of course, keeping yourself safe and secure while you're doing it is another very important part of things. So
Absolutely.
I want to talk about the most popular search on Google related to keyword preparedness, and that is fire safety. Creating a fire escape plan is actually one of the absolute top things in people's minds when you're talking about making a plan. It should fall very, very high up on your preparedness planning. It is probably one of the number one things that you can plan for, because fires happen every single day and they destroy homes, they destroy people's lives. The funny thing is, it doesn't even have to be your home. It could be the house next door. If you live in a duplex, their house burns, your house burns. You know, if and I was talking to Ed about this just before the show today. One of my wife's clients just recently had a place burned down. Their next door neighbor, the house is like 50 some odd feet away, and the client had to evacuate their house, of course, because because things were burning right next door. And I mean, we're talking about 100-foot flames, right? So they got away, and they were standing outside basically all night long and waiting for the house to be put out. But as they went to their house later the next day, they saw that all the siding along their house, had melted down the side, because the heat got so hot that it just melted everything. So there's a high likelihood that even that far away, their house could have caught fire as well.
Yep.
In fact, it was probably pretty close to being done. And it wasn't even their house, it wasn't even their house that lit up. It was somebody next door, maybe being irresponsible or just made a mistake, whatever it might be.
But they had to get out of their house.
But they had to get out, and they had to get out quick. And now they're going to be asked. I mean, there's going to be a stink in that house because there was so much smoke all over the place, So there's a lot to be considered around fire safety. But number one, be able to have a plan to get out of your house quickly, right?
Yep.
And it's not
prior planning.
Prevents.
Prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Again, people they don't plan to fail. They fail to plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So as an individual, it might seem simple to us, right? Mm-hmm. If it was just me living in a house, I would go, okay, there's my door right there. Or my next point of egress might be, up the stairs or whatever it might be, always have two means of escape in case one is blocked. Right. And that's why actually I came really close to buying one of these for my kids, but because I've got one 2-story window in one bedroom that could be kind of high to try to drop from, out the back. Any of my kids could just jump out the window, hang from the window, drop down, and there's no risk of injury at all. Out the front of the house, there is a potential risk. So if anyone in the front of the house, there was a fire in a hallway, they would have to go out a window that way. So I was thinking about getting one of those little extension ladder type of things.
Yeah.
I haven't.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I haven't done so yet, but that's something you could do, especially if you're in those situations where you're in like a 3rd story or 4th story window, apartment complex or something like that. And you just want to have something to drop you a little bit lower to the ground so that you can get out quickly, Now in larger complexes like that, usually they have fire escape plans and directions you can go, multiple escape routes and things like that already planned for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But what that implies, though, that you actually pay attention to it.
That's true.
And what the escape plan is. They teach us in school. I don't know if they still do. I presume they do. Go look at the fire plan.
Yeah.
Know what your escape route is and actually train that escape route. So why wouldn't you do that at work?
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting point. Yeah. Because have you ever seen the Matt Dillon's first episode of Bourne Identity, where he's in the
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, not Dillon. Matt Damon.
You're right.
Matt Damon. He's in the embassy there, and he's trying to get out, and he just grabs off the wall one of their escape plans, so he knows, all right, there we go.
Yep, that's how I'm going to get out, or that's a way to get out, or there's the 2 escape plans. So what that also would imply to him is maybe this is the way they're going to be coming up to get me, so I need to go a different way, or whatever it may be. Who knows?
He doesn't know how, but he's also ninja trained. So
yeah, and he can jump from very high buildings and climb down outside the building. Yeah,
but that was an interesting point. There's sometimes Hollywood has at least interesting points. And I thought that was one. Like, hey, there's the fire escape plan. I would have never thought about that if I was in that situation, but it probably works.
That entire movie is a point, and it is an awesome point. That is an awesome, awesome movie. Bourne Identity. Matt Damon.
I
gotta go watch that again. That is so funny. I'm Matt Damon.
Well, Bourne Identity and Team America.
Exactly. Okay. So I guess the big lesson here is when it comes to fire safety, of course, you're going to do something at home. You're going to plan something at home for your kids, for your your pets.
Except the cat.
That is so funny. Poor cat's
if only the cat could hear me.
If only the cat gave a crap what you think.
She doesn't. She just don't care.
Yeah. Anyway, so pets. The other part, of course, is if your family includes small kids, elderly.
Yeah.
Again, mentally challenged, physically challenged individuals, having a plan to take care of them as well is very, very important. It can get a lot bigger than that, of course, if it's a fire coming through the region, like you've seen in some of the Californias and the Colorado areas. Maybe you want to also help people in your community, other people in your neighborhood or whatever it may be, help and make sure other people are taken care of or are able to evacuate safely and things like that. So,
and that's the mark of a true leader and professional and human, is to not just be prepared for yourself, but be prepared for others.
Yep.
Is, if something bad goes down, there's going to be a lot of people that are just completely lost in the sauce, and it's a really selfish motive to just go along your way. And there's going to possibly be scenarios where you're not going to be able to help as much as you would like, but you're probably, if there's a bad situation, you're going to have, if you're prepared and you're a human and a leader, you're going to have awesome opportunities to make some great connections with people
to serve. Yeah.
Quite possibly saving their life.
Absolutely. I posted recently on our social media that fact of 48% of people do not have the emergency preparedness supplies in order to get them through a disaster safely.
Yeah,
48%. So looking around you, that's half the people, half the houses around you will not have the necessary emergency equipment, emergency supplies, water, food, safety, whatever it might be. They won't have it.
I dare say that probably at least 50% of the people that said they were prepared were exaggerating too.
Poorly prepared.
Yeah,
maybe.
So
you're right.
Might be poorly prepared, and they said, "Yeah, I'm prepared."
Yeah. Thinking that having a couple of cans of top ramen or something.
Yeah. 14 kids and a can of beans ain't prepared.
No, not really. Well, for one meal, a very small meal.
Couple of beans per kid.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Hey,
we used to sing a cadence: 14 kids and a can of beans.
and are you going to go on?
There's cadences we sung in the Marines that we can't sing here on GenXTalkin.
No, it's probably not a good idea.
We can sing the first part, say, "I know a girl from New Orleans, 14 kids and a can of beans," and that's as far as we can go.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We'll have an adult version of GenXTalkin sometime.
We'll do the outtakes behind a paywall.
Yeah. Here's the outtakes.
Yeah. You don't want to watch that. So of course, doing this for work, looking at escape plans, fire escape plans, things like that for work. But also when you're traveling, airports, hotels, temporary places where if you're going into an office complex or something like that, as you're walking by the fire escape plan, just take a quick look. Don't rip it off the wall like Jason Bourne or anything like that. But just be prepared and have a general concept of what direction you should go in a case of an emergency, and where the staircases are instead of elevators, things like that.
A little bit of foresight and planning can really help you out a lot. Case in point, last trip I took, I ended up having some allergies, headaches, sinuses, and other issues. And with a little bit of planning and preparation, I knew there was an ABC store right down the street a little ways. Go in there, buy the stuff dirt cheap instead of going into the
into the casino.
Yeah. And buying it for like $20 anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, any little thing you're doing to think about what's the fastest, best, easiest, cheapest way to make me more comfortable, my family, my friends, how are we going to stay more prepared, more safe, more secure?
Yeah.
Any little thing.
Yeah, absolutely. When everybody was in our office complex, was the floor safety manager or the office safety manager, and that's the person you can always tell them because they've got their super bright vest hanging at the front of their cubicle or in their on their office door or whatever it may be, and that's the person to which you can go to find answers, things like that in emergency type of situations. So always just be aware of that, be aware that person is there and is is designed to help in emergencies. Or heck, why not volunteer yourself for that role?
That's true. And those people in some companies and buildings, I've seen them be pretty much mandated to have the escape plan posted right in their cubicle.
Yeah. One of the interesting facts I remember hearing in that 9/11 One Day in America series was the guy, I can't remember the guy's name, but there are several people who were actually involved in had experienced the original attacks of the World Trade Center in 1993, right?
Yep.
And they became the floor safety manager of in their tower. And so they were the ones that could effectively say, not that they would ever say it, but people around them would say, they absolutely saved my life and they saved hundreds of other people because we trained this, whatever it was, every month, every quarter, certainly every year, we trained, and they were on our butts about it every single time and taking it so seriously. And everybody was joking about them taking it so seriously. And yet here this massive event occurs and they have saved hundreds of lives because they went through all that training. So it's not very difficult. I remember as a kid, we used to joke about it and we'd be like, oh my God, here we go. Another fire drill, whatever. And you're sitting out there in the cold and you're frustrated because you gotta, you're either falling behind in school or you're happy because you don't have to be in school or whatever. But it should be taken seriously. And we should all remember that.
And that's where the veterancy factor comes into play. And if you're not prepared and if you're not that person, you should, even in your condition, be able to reasonably look up to somebody that what their background is. They've done this before. They're the floor captain or whatever. And you should be able to go to them with some questions, and they should have some answers for you. So don't be afraid to ask. If you don't know what some of these scenarios might play out as, you can always ask people. And if you are that veteran, you should have that veterancy to where you have the leadership and experience built into you, where you're properly motivating people and saying, hey, this is not just a drill, this is why we do this drill or whatever. So if you're not the veteran leader, don't consider it like you have a weakness or a flaw or anything. Just recognize, and if your veteran leader, whoever your floor captain is, you might think if they happen to be a little bit weak, they're not the ones that are really stepping up as much as they should. Maybe they're a little bit disorganized. If you are of more veterancy, or if you're more trained or experienced or whatever, just be professional, positive, and pragmatic in approaching them and saying, okay, I see that you're wearing the vest. However, I don't know if you're having a bad day or whatever. Let's talk about this. Maybe we switch roles for a little bit because I've done this a few times before. And let's get these people out safely, whatever the situation is. If you're the junior and you don't have the experience, accept that role. And if you are a more experienced senior or leader, step up and accept that role.
Now if we were to back up just a hair to the fire escape plan, and talk a little bit about locations that you can meet up.
Fire escape plan. Where are you going to meet? What's your immediate rally point coming out of the house for the fire escape plan?
What are some of the things that, or have you given this much thought? What are some of the thoughts? We were talking about it a little bit before, but what are some of the thoughts you have on family? And if there's an evacuation or something that needs to happen, how are you going to meet up with family? Where would you go? Anything like that? What thoughts have you given to that?
Well, we don't have a huge fire escape plan from the house because it's a very small house, and we can just get out the door. And we have actually had some episodes where I tried cooking, and there was so much smoke in the house that we had to evacuate out the front door. So we were able to get out safely from that situation. And I ain't kidding, man. I had this thing fumigated. I mean, completely smoked out. But we eventually opened all the doors, turned on some fans and stuff like that. The fire alarms were going off. I think we were about to have the fire department called out here and everything else like that. But so we know if there is a fire, we're just there's one main egress route, and it's usually pretty clear. If there's not, the whole house would have to be ablaze. We'd have to be surrounded for us to not get out one way or the other.
Yeah,
we can usually get out the front. I don't foresee a problem with that, with the size of the house. And that goes to planning. What size of house do you have? What's the construction materials made out of? What other materials do you have in the house? How flammable are they? But for actually any kind of different scenario, there's a couple of locations outside of our neighborhood to the north that we're going to use as a rally point up there, and we're going to text and things like that. So that's already planned out.
Yeah,
but yeah, we do have very, very basic escape or evacuation, immediate escape or evacuation. I mean, within 15 to 30 minutes, we can get out. We can start rally pointing at this certain designated spot.
Yeah.
I don't have a contingency plan for it yet. So I haven't told anybody, well, if this spot isn't working for whatever reason, go to this next spot. So we need to get to that next step. But we need to get our communications in order a little bit more and stuff like that. So
the last thing I wanted to just comment on is just everyone, please just realize that National Preparedness Month doesn't stop at the end of September. It keeps on going, and we should keep on going in making our efforts more effective, becoming more prepared, and making a plan. So with that, Ed, you want to share some parting shots today?
Yeah, my parting shot for all this is going to be that there's a viral Instagram, social media little video out there where it's I think a current or former Navy SEAL talking to some type of graduating class, and he's saying, get up in the morning and make your bed every day.
Make your bed. Yes.
That way, number one, you've accomplished something and your bed is ready to sleep in when you at the end of the day. But in addition to making your bed every day, and I don't make my bed every day, but I get it ready. Once I get out of bed, I get it ready every day. I don't tuck in tight corners and things like that anymore.
Bounce a quarter on it. Nope.
Yeah. Misha and I have the bed pretty much ready. That way, when we go in, we don't have to, oh my God, now what do we do? Anyway, in addition to making your bed every day, at least think a little bit about planning and preparedness every day. Make it a habit. People like to emulate good leaders, and good leaders, they're all about planning and preparation. And we are all creatures of habit. I mean, think of it this way. What hand do you use when you go to the bathroom? Are you left and right?
Should I share this with people?
But think about it. We're creatures of habit.
Yes. Yes.
And good habits are also like bad habits. Good habits are hard to break. Get into this good habit. Make your bed every day.
Yes.
Plan and at least think a little bit about planning and preparation every day. It's gonna start coming more and more, and you're gonna have fun researching it. You're gonna find out new things every day, and it's endless. You're not gonna run out of things to think about and research and plan and prep. That's my parting shot for today, Matt.
That is awesome. Yes. And by the way, if you ever get a chance to read the book, it is an absolutely awesome book. It's a great presentation that he gives, but it's a super short little book as well that you can get on Amazon or Kindle or whatever you read on.
Awesome.
So
Is that
fantastic.
the Navy SEAL guy?
Yep. Make your bed.
Make your bed.
um, so my parting shot, I've kind of already alluded to it, and that's preparedness doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at end of National Preparedness Month. We should all just continue our efforts to become more prepared. Even if it's just for a fire, a house fire, a regional fire, whatever it may be, even if it's just something as simple as that, just improve your chances of survival, your chances of being less dramatically affected by these, potentially life-changing events. Keep going, and remember that practice makes progress.
Right. Exactly.
Practice makes progress.
Yep.
And that's all progress. I have for a parting shot today.
Yeah. Progress over perfection, guys. Mm-hmm. And again, we thank everybody for listening and downloading and everything. It's greatly appreciated. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, everything else out there. And if there's anything that, we're very open to any feedback. Let us know the positives or negatives, the sustains or the improves. For sustains, what are we doing that you'd like to see us do more of? Improves wise, what is it that you would like us to what do you want to see us do or hear us do? How can we improve what we're doing? We're always willing to listen to that feedback, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Ed. All right.
Well, thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure and privilege talking with you.
Another good show. Until next time, this is Matt Marshall signing off.
Ed Wasson signing off, guys. Be well.